Hey, welcome back to SharePoint TV. My name is Jeff Fritz, and I'm joined again by Sesha Mani. Sesha, great to see you again.
Great to see you again, Jeff.
Now, I understand we actually made some announcements today that you were involved in that we want to share and make sure that all of our friends on SharePoint TV should hear about. What did we announce?
Absolutely, yes. We have three announcements, I think important ones we announced today. The first one is I'm going to talk about on the data loss prevention policies. So as you know, two new controls we've announced in this particular aspect. Office 365 DLP, which allows you to create prevention policies that are based on existing 51 templates of security information types. For example, US financial data, UK financial data, or healthcare data. So we have 51 templates like that where you can create data loss prevention policies.
That's a lot to start.
That's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
What we have announced today is two security controls on top of that DLP policy.
Okay.
The first one you're seeing is what we call block external access by default. Now, what that means is today when you configure DLP policies, and it takes about 15 minutes to a couple of hours for the policy to kick in and scan a new file. So let's say I'm uploading a new file to SharePoint and OneDrive. It may take somewhere between 15 minutes to a couple of hours depending on how many other policies you have configured in your DLP, right? So the question is, during that 15 minutes, somebody could go in and share with an external user.
Yeah, you're exposed.
Right? You are exposed for that.
Yeah.
So to address that particular security gap, we have announced a new tenant level setting, which as you can see in this picture, it's called mark new files sensitive by default. That means when you upload a file, net new file, or you're creating a new file in SharePoint Online, those will be blocked for external sharing by default until the DLP scan comes in and picks up the document and then says whether it is a sensitive file or not.
Okay. Then you get that approval that allows the external folks to access.
Exactly, exactly. So that is one important capability. So even within that 15 minutes or a couple of hours period, we want to ensure that your corporate resources are protected.
Sure.
The second one we have announced, security control, is blocking anonymous links for sensitive files. Now today, as some of you who are using Office 365 DLP already, you know that when you configure a DLP, one of the conditions you can say is if those criteria meets, let's say a document has 10 or 25 credit card numbers in it, then you have a condition you can say block access to external users.
Sure.
Now the challenge is that allows you to control access to everybody, including your external authenticated users. It could be a collaborator you want to work with, and anyone who is having anonymous link or anonymous access to the file as well.
Okay.
What we clearly hear the feedback was, well, there are projects where I want my external collaborators to work with in my sensitive files. So for example, I'm doing a merger with a company. Now initially during that merger period, I have to share with the external user.
Yeah, document discovery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it is a sensitive file, right? Because it's about merging with that particular company, right? So it's a valid scenario where you want to allow the external users who are authenticated from that company to have access to the sensitive file, but you don't want to allow anonymous users, anonymous links to be available for the sensitive file. So now with this new security control, you can now add a condition that says if the DLP detects a file as a sensitive file, block anonymous access and anonymous sharing for that particular file. Okay. So those are the two controls we announced in around DLP today. So let me actually quickly show you what we have here. Is the first control that I said is a very simple PowerShell command that we introduce at the parameter for set SPO tenant. As you can see here, there's a new parameter called mark new files sensitive by default. And I have chosen to block external sharing. Okay. So that means every time a new file is uploaded, it's going to be blocked for external sharing and external access until the DLP scan comes and scans the file to give it a or nay, whether it's a sensitive file or not, right? Yeah. So that is what that particular capability is. The second one I'm going to briefly show is ability to set the anonymous access, which is the second feature I talked about. Yeah. Right? So here I am, let me zoom it in for you. Here I am in the DLP policy setup. So as you can see, I have picked up the US financial data as one of the criteria to create this policy, right? And I'm also saying if the policy, if the document meets this criteria, then, and the content is actually shared with anonymous access with somebody, then you block access to those anonymous links. So for example, imagine a file does not have any sensitive file information. I got shared with anonymously. So that means anyone who has the link can now access the file.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Now I start working with the file. I added more sensitive information to it, including US financial data like credit card, bank card into it.
Yeah.
But guess what? That link is already out there, anonymous link, right? But it has the sensitive information now. Right?
So now you want to be able to revoke.
Exactly. So that is exactly what this condition is saying.
Gotcha.
If the file has been shared anonymously and it has the financial data in it, then now revoke access to all those anonymous links that I sent out. And also going forward, do not allow any anonymous sharing for that particular file.
So suddenly all those links become broken that were shared, and if they get further shared, they don't work at all.
Exactly.
Great.
Exactly. So that way, your sensitive document is now completely protected in this enterprise corpus, right? Now let me show you one example of such a file. So here I have a file which is customer accounts information, right?
Okay.
Now as the name implies, it has my customer's accounts information in it.
Yeah.
It's a very sensitive file. And the DLP scan has walked through it, and I believe if I go and look for trying to share anonymously, and you see that it's disabled.
Yeah, look at that, right off the top. Okay.
Right at the top, because the file got flagged as a sensitive file, and then the DLP condition applied saying you cannot share this file as anyone anonymous link.
Great. Oh my gosh.
So that's really how we are taking the DLP into the next level, so that each and every aspects of gaps that perhaps is there, like even the 15 minutes we want to protect you, and also anyone like anonymous link that you sent out for a file, but now it has a sensitive information, we want to protect you that as well. Yeah.
That's great that it's learning. These are the things that are important. We set a policy, this is important, don't do these things, and it's immediately picking up and blocking. That's great stuff. Oh my gosh. I can already think of how many documents that on previous employers where we weren't using SharePoint accidentally getting leaked and sent all over the place.
Exactly.
Really good solution here to protect that customer information.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Yeah. Now, there was another announcement, right?
That's right. There's one more.
Okay.
That's right.
Oh man, this is a good one, I think.
Yes. So let me actually switch that to quickly walk you through on this example here. So I think, as I mentioned yesterday and today, there are a lot of security controls and compliance controls, new information that we have added. One additional one we're also planning to look at is what we call the highly regulated controls. And these ones are mainly about highly regulated industries such as energy, financial services, or even government services, where they have a strict regulations that to avoid some sort of internal collaboration between two different departments. So the good example I always use is in the financial services, they have a control, SEC control, to avoid insider trading.
Yes.
So, for example, you have a department called corporate advisory. You have another department for investment banking, right?
Right.
Corporate advisory departments are usually meant for advising corporates like Microsoft, saying probably you should merge or acquire this particular company because they have a good financial standing and so on.
Sure.
Whereas the investment banking department is usually meant for helping individuals to say, hey, Sesha, perhaps you should invest in these shares or these mutual funds so you get better return for it.
Okay.
But the insider trading problem is, if corporate advisory happens to know that a company is acquiring somebody else, they could actually potentially leak the information to the other department.
To the investment.
Exactly, you got it. So to avoid that kind of insider trading, SEC requires you to prove that you have controls in place in your organization to avoid this insider trading. And this is exactly what we refer as information barriers. So you create a barrier between information that is belonging to one department, in this case corporate advisory, as well as the information that belongs to another department, which is the investment banking, right?
Okay.
So you create a barrier between these two set of users altogether so that they cannot share each other the documents from their respective sites. So for example, let me explain that in the context of very simple terms. Regular SPO SharePoint sites, the way that permission works is you have site visitors who can view the document, then you have members and owners who can now edit the documents. If I wanted to bring somebody to my site collection, anyone can join the site collection as long as the site owner approves that membership, right? That's how easy it is, how simple it is, the SharePoint regular sites are. But in the context of an IB associated site, which means an information barrier associated site. So let's say I have a site for corporate advisory.
Okay.
In that particular site collection, the regulation says that I should be able to allow members that are only from that information barrier segment. And also, to access the site and the contents inside the site, the user must match the IB segment of the site as well. So let's say the site belongs to corporate advisory, which means only users from that corporate advisory IB segment are allowed access to the particular site.
Okay, that makes sense.
If somebody else is trying to go and access, we'll say, no, stop, you cannot get into this particular site collection. So you see, like, even within the organization, you need to, especially for highly regulated industries, you need this barrier to be established. That's exactly one of our roadmap item that we are looking ahead, so that you can have regular SPO sites as well as IB associated sites in your enterprise corpus.
Nice.
So it allows you to achieve highly regulations that you have to obey to.
Okay, and I'm assuming this also affects search.
Absolutely, that's a great question. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So if you are belonging to a corporate advisory user, and you perhaps happen to have permission, or somebody has invited you to a site that belongs to investment banking, but when you go and search in this experience, we will filter out the documents that are meant for the investment banking, because
so they don't accidentally appear in search engine results.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is our vision of how we will take this forward into this into the journey itself.
Cool.
The second most important thing I want to also call out is how do you, or where would you actually configure these information barrier segments? This is in one place, will be in a Microsoft 365 Security and Compliance Center.
Okay.
That's where you will be able to configure these information barrier segments, and that will then be honored between Teams and SharePoint services as well.
Oh, good,
So
good.
That's our plan ahead, so that you have enterprise-wide IB segments that you are create.
So that's the plan going ahead. We made the announcement. When's this going to be available for folks to use?
We don't have the specific timeline yet that we have shared. I would say before Ignite, we will have announcements coming out on that time as well.
We'll talk about roadmap before and probably at Ignite as well.
Ignite as well, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
This is great. I like seeing the innovation. I like seeing that we're taking those, not just business requirements, but regulatory organization requirements. We're making it a part of something to make everybody's job easier without having to think about it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Just helping you fall into that pit of success.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, that's
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Sesha. This is great. I am very excited to see these new innovations coming and learn more about them leading into Ignite. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here on SharePoint TV. I hope you stick around. In the next few minutes, we'll bring in our next guest, and we'll be right back.
Thank you, everyone.